Both of us single dads from the Midwest, we can talk about it. Both of us single dads from the Midwest, we can talk about it. Both of us single dads from the Midwest, we can talk about it. Or we can get gully, I'll size up your body and put some white chalk around it.
Welcome to the Single Dads of the Midwest, episode 32. I'm here with the amazing Ege to talk about dating and other things. He actually is a dating coach himself. But Ege, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. First of all, podcast name, it's quite funny. I would love to hear the story behind how you came up with that. Just to, I guess, give a quick background on myself. A few years ago, I was working as a software engineer, and when COVID started, I realized, okay, like I don't want to be stuck at home. I want to run my own business. And I had a lot of experience kind of transforming my own life from being someone who was not very social, who was scared to even go to like the cashier at McDonald's and be scared to like ask for extra ketchup, to be able to, go to different environments, go from my home country, Turkey, all the way to the US, and connect with people from different backgrounds. So I thought this is a skill that has changed my life, and I want to use this skill set to help other people change their lives. And I thought it would be good to teach that skill set specifically on a dating context, because for a lot of guys, what's more interesting than saying, hey, you want to connect with people, is to say, hey, you want to date the type of woman that you want to date, and that's based to lure people into doing the work that they feel like they should do, but they haven't done this yet.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And also, I just want to give a shout out to Don/Sheldon for putting us in contact with each other. And I know he's also done some work with you, so we could talk about that more generically, of course. And just I've described this in some podcasts, but the Single Dad's name came from a rap video with the rapper Machine Gun Kelly, where he referenced being a single dad of the Midwest. And I just thought that was like a fun phrase to use. And then the idea for the podcast came from some Toronto sports journalists that I followed during the pandemic who, having nothing to do, decided to do a similar thing where they talked to friends about things that they were passionate about. So kind of similar. I decided to copy that idea loosely and turn it into this. And I'm very amazed by how much this has grown. Like, I expected it to just do it with people I knew, and now Sheldon's connected me with a whole bunch of people. I've also met people on my own. So that's been great. So being that this is essentially, so we've actually done 2 episodes on dating on the podcast, although it was more generic. It wasn't like talking to a dating coach, and Sheldon was in both of those. So I consider this one a spiritual successor to those episodes. The first, and I have a list of questions from Sheldon, but the first one is probably something you get all the time. What are some of the common dating pitfalls you see and the advice that you'd give for those?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems people face, especially if they come from a more like analytical background, I work with a lot of software engineers, accountants, people in finance, and the difficulty they have is the work is so logical that they think, okay, if I have problems with my social skills, if I have problems with connecting with people, then the solution will be something that's step by step, that's logical, that I can follow. Whereas the problem that they face most of the time is because they think so analytically, they're not able to be in the moment and be present. So that's the common problem people face. One of the most common questions I get is like, how do I walk up and say hi to someone that I'm interested in? Which a lot of people want to do, but especially with the current environment, they don't know how to do, because people are moving more towards online. It's a skill that people had a long time ago that they've lost touch with now. But those are the questions generally I tend to find below the surface level question. There's other problems that people haven't addressed, like limited beliefs, insecurities, a lack of self-belief, which is where my work really comes in. Because if we didn't have those insecurities and limiting beliefs, then starting a conversation is something you already know how to do. You say something, you engage person, we go from there. But because it feels so personal, we're scared to do that. And rather, we prefer to isolate ourselves and use easier mediums like going online and stuff like that.
And it makes a lot of sense. I'm sort of not really in the dating game per se, but like I definitely preferred in-person connections too. And I think it is definitely a much more difficult thing to ask out. I mean, unsurprisingly, everyone would agree it's more difficult to ask out someone in person than, you know, sending a message through social media or even a dating site. So you talked about like there's underlying issues like limiting self-beliefs, maybe a low self-esteem, other like insecurities. I guess everyone is obviously going to be different in what those are, but I guess what are the common ones that you see? Especially, I'm sure engineers will have more similar kind of limiting beliefs or insecurities than maybe like a different demographic. And then how have your clients like overcome those insecurities, like success stories?
Yeah, a lot of the clients I work with, the insecurities come from actually how people are painted in like movies and stuff. You know, the classic image of the nerdy guy who's good at work, but his friend who's like a frat boy is trying to teach him how to talk to a woman and he has no idea. So a lot of people think, you know, because of their profession or how they look or how tall they are, they cannot date a certain caliber of woman. And that affects them in different layers. That affects them where, you know, they don't start the conversation. Even if they're in conversation, they end the conversation early because they feel like, okay, you know, this person's having a conversation just because they want to be nice rather than, oh, this person's genuinely interested in me. So I think a lot of the limiting beliefs is stuff that we've kind of been indoctrinated into as we were growing up that we never consciously think about, because, you know, you watch a Hollywood movie, you go out, you hear certain things from your friends, your family, different parts of society, the news, but you never actually question, like, okay, is this person who's telling me this actually a credible source? And what I find with a lot of clients that I work with is they already have the right things in place to be a guy who's attracted to the people that they need, but they just don't have the right beliefs around that. So if they can borrow my belief and the work that I've done with people just like them, even that at the beginning, seeing the results that seeing the results that we've had for other people, that really builds that self-belief because they see someone who considers like them getting the results that they want to get. And they say, okay, well, this person can do it. Why can't I? And changing that mind frame from, oh, you know, why is dating so hard these days? Why does no one want to talk to me? Why is socializing not a natural skill set that I have, to actually, how can I make this work for myself, is a big mental shift that we work on at the beginning. Instead of asking questions that start with why and put you in a victim mindset, how can you start asking questions with how? So you train your brain to actually solve the problems you're facing rather than just feel sorry for yourself and dwell on the problems that are coming up.
Yeah, I think avoiding victimhood is important pretty much in any area, not just like dating, because it gives yourself a sense of agency and advocacy. So that makes a lot of sense. Then the next question from Don, which I think kind of stems into one of those insecurities, is the question is, a lot of people think I'll never get a partner because I'm too short, too nerdy, too fat, too logical, race, accent, etc. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I don't know how much like you've personally gone into this kind of black hole of this type of content and advice. And there's a lot of people who actually build their whole channels based on it's like there's people who rate guys' faces, tell the audience they have, or if you don't have a face with a sharp jawline, you'll never get a partner. And people love that. That gets more traction than the message of like, dude, you have to work on yourself, you have to do these things. And I ask myself, why? Because most people, they don't actually want their problems solved. They want people, a group of people to feel sorry with.
Yeah.
So if someone's struggling with that lack of belief, dude, some things about your life you can never change. Like you cannot change how tall you are. You can kind of change how you look like with fashion and fitness, which you should do. Like you should maximize how you look in different parts of your life. But why feel sorry about things that you cannot change? Because in the end, even if those things were true, you only have one life.
Mm,
So
very
do you
true.
really want to spend that life feeling sorry and feeling miserable and people are against you? Or do you want to make the most of that life? And here's the other thing, like, I don't know if you know this about me, Alex. I don't think we've talked about this specifically, but around like 6, 7 years ago when I was in high school,
Mhm,
I was around 225 pounds playing League of Legends 10 hours a day.
mhm,
And when I show that picture to people, they don't even believe it's me because
mhm,
I look so different. So if I saw that type of content that told me, yeah, man, feel sorry for yourself, you're never going to get success, at that point, I would have believed it. But coincidentally, I had a bit of an optimistic attitude at the time. I wanted to get into the basketball team, so I just lost weight. And after I lost weight, got my fashion in order, and no longer my mom picked my clothes and actually picked my own clothes for myself.
mhm.
Started going to the gym, things fell into. And if you maximize those parts of your life, then things will also fall into place for you as long as you put yourself out there enough. A lot of people like try once, they take that one reference experience, and then they say, okay, I knew this wasn't going to work anyway.
Mhm.
But I can tell you, if you commit to working on yourself for the next 5 years, talk to one new person, go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, learn about fashion and fix your fashion a bit more, there is no way you'll still be stuck in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think day by day. And like, I think one thing I've learned in a lot of areas of life, dating included, but just I do a lot of different activities is like failure is kind of like par for the course. And it's like your ability to just take those failures in good faith and just like keep on progressing. I mean, learn from them if possible. Like sometimes failures indicate you're doing something wrong, but sometimes the failure could be something completely out of your control. Like there are some women that I've dated where like it didn't work out because we just weren't compatible. Like no one did anything wrong. Like both were like attracted, but like there was compatibility with personality types, what we wanted. And I think that's true in a lot of cases. And so not all failure doesn't have to be a bad thing in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Um, a lot of the time, we just make things so personal. Whereas, as you said, sometimes it's just not even about you. There's a lot of men, like especially socializing. It
Yeah.
depends on two people. A lot of guys think like it's me against the world. I want to
Mhm.
make a good impression, be charming, be charismatic. But I see it more of a collaborative process where you come in and you're the sort of fun, you have the intention to connect with people,
Mhm.
and you find the people who resonate with that rather than try to convince everyone to have a conversation with you. Because even the charismatic people, you resonate with some people and you don't resonate with some people. And
Mhm.
when you really internalize that mindset, you reduce the pressure on yourself. A lot of people just put too much pressure on
Mhm.
themselves, which leads to them failing more and then beating themselves up,
Yeah.
which just feeds into a negative cycle because now it's even harder to get results because they're in a negative headspace.
No, definitely. In terms of approaching people, I know in my experiences in the past, like if there's someone like attractive at the bar or something, like I have no problem going up. But where I get very intimidated, at least myself, is if a woman is with a group of their friends, especially if I'm like on my own and I don't have like other friends too. It just feels like a weird dynamic where I don't want to be creepy or interrupt, but I still want to talk to this person. What advice would you give for that context?
Yeah, I'd say when it comes to group situations, like when you come in, you address the group. Like You want to be bold, but in a respectful way.
Okay.
And even if someone's not interested, people respect that. Like if you can actually go into a group of 7 friends and say, hey, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I thought your friend looked really nice. I had to come say something. Then even if that person's not interested, they'll be like, okay, this guy has balls. He can actually do it. And even that, like, I think a lot of people have issues because they feel deep down they're doing something wrong. In the end, you're just giving someone a compliment. If you were with your friends and someone came up to you and gave a genuine compliment, there is a very low chance that you react negative, unless you were having a terrible day, which in that case, it wouldn't be dependent on what the person said. It would be about you. In these type of situations, I think recognizing, first of all, if you get a negative reaction, most of the time, as long as you have good intentions and you're calibrated, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And secondly,
I agree.
This is like in a moment to moment basis. I don't think this is even about like dating amazing girls. This is about you building your self reliance.
Yeah.
So in that moment, do you want to give a point to that version of you who wants to live that best version of you? Or do you want to give a point to that negative self-talk, self-critical person who wants to stay in the comfort zone? Not in an intense way where you're like, yeah, I have to do this, otherwise I'm a failure. Just like a light-hearted way where you slowly become the person you want to be.
Nice. And I think that leads us to the next segment. So I think we're talking a lot from the perspective of like men, obviously, probably in a straight sense, asking out women. Another question that Sheldon talked about is, I'm sure you've probably talked to some women on your YouTube channel. What are the things that you've learned from their perspective, from the, I guess, other side of the equation?
Very good question. What are the main lessons that I learned just from personal experience and from both coaching guys, going out with a lot of people, but also building closer relationships, is when you're a guy, you want to do the cool thing. Not even for the girl, but so you can go to your friends and brag about it. But for the girl, the main emotion that she wants to feel is trust and comfort. So a lot of guys like.
Oh, sorry. Did you say trust and support? I just missed that part.
Yeah, trust and comfort. So she wants to be around the type of guy that she can actually trust, who will attack happens. Whereas most guys are actually more interested learning about like, how do I tell an amazing story, or how do I look cool, or how do I become like very funny and playful, which women care to a certain extent. They don't care as much. So one of the things I learned talking to women is you've probably, gone to a bar and seen a guy who's very charismatic, has the perfect joke at the perfect time, and you're like, fuck, man, I want to be like that guy. Except if that guy doesn't genuinely connect with the person he's speaking to, the girl doesn't care. Like this whole idea of connecting with people is one in being genuine and being real and owning vulnerabilities in a relaxed way. That is a lot more attractive compared to just like cracking funny jokes. That's exciting. That's what people want to see, and that's what gets attention. Like if you make YouTube content and you have an exciting conversation, that's going to get more eyeballs. But if we look at this from just the point of, did I actually connect with this person? In order for that person to feel that, and for you to feel that, you need to make them comfortable, and they need to actually know about you, and you need to know about them, which was the main thing that I learned just talking to women, making friends with people, but also going on a lot of dates.
Makes sense. Next question from Sheldon is let me read it maybe verbatim. What's the most important thing a man can do to improve his dating life? Although I'd imagine that this is going to vary depending on the person. Like, I don't think there's one answer to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely dependent on the person. I would, it's hard to find one thing, man.
Sure.
One thing I would say though is, as I say, it's hard to say one thing. One thing I would say is most people are not as relaxed as they think they are. Like we think we are more relaxed in our heads, but the way we come off to people, we're not very relaxed. And the way you actually recognize that is, I don't know if personally you've done a lot of like long meditations, but when we were working with Don, you know, he came with a certain set of problems, but one of the biggest things that helped him was we have meditation sequence that's focused on really relaxing the body, but also putting yourself in a certain state. So you're certain what you're saying, but also relaxed without feeling that pressure on yourself. And just sitting with that for an hour a day, 45 an hour a day, makes you realize like how tense most people are when you interact with them, because you unlock a new level of relaxation. So if anyone wants like two things they could do watching this podcast, sit down, meditate for 45 minutes to an hour a day, talk to one or two new people a day. And even if you don't pay for any coaching, if you do that long enough and you reflect on that experience, you will start seeing results. And if you're not, you can always reach out to someone, because at least you have the fundamentals down. You're putting in those key actions.
Yeah, mind body awareness is huge, and there's a lot of different types of meditation, but I think just focusing on like how your muscles feel and tension and feelings is something that's been helpful for me in general. It doesn't really have to do with dating per se, but just like especially since I get like general anxiety, like it helps me just like calm down and stuff like that, especially with sports, because I want to be relaxed, but sometimes I get tense, which is not kind of understandable when you're like playing certain sports. But yeah, I think that's definitely helpful. I know the pandemic years have made it like kind of harder for people to do, at least more in-person interaction, where I think it's also like, I feel like Zoom makes it harder too, because body language is like a lot of communication happens through body language, but you know, that doesn't really translate perfectly through a screen. And so, you know, now hopefully, knock on wood, things will start kind of getting fully normalized. More people will get vaccinated. Hopefully the pandemic like fades and there isn't another variant. In terms of building up those social skills, especially like some people already struggled, and then you didn't add this layer of not being able to literally interact. How can people build those skills? I guess you said talking to other people, but is there like specific exercises or contexts where that works best, or you would recommend?
Yeah, so depending on what specifically you struggle, if you haven't been stuck there for a long time, you haven't been doing anything, then the first step is leave your house, like take a walk for an hour a day. And you don't even have to talk to people, you can just take a walk, observe the environment. Like even still naturally, I have a very introverted personality. So if I just work for like 4 or 5 days, not leave the house, the time I get out of the house, I'm just like, oh shit, there's all these things going on outside. So you get a wave of like, wow, what's going on? Because there's all the stimuli. Now, if you have been going out, but maybe you've been seeing some friends, you have to remember, with anything that happens, we can take it as a negative context, like, oh, we had the panic and social, or we can take it as a positive and say, well, probably other people want to socialize as much as I do, because we haven't been able to do it for the past.
Sure.
I guess humans, we used to live in tribes. We're built to socialize. It's just a natural need to have a sense of belonging to a group, but also feel connected to the community that you're in. So if someone to get back into that social flow, the best thing is going to be starting conversations with people, gradually making it harder. So for people I work with, if someone hasn't done this before, I'll be like, all right, this week, go for a walk 2 or 3 times a week. Okay, you went for a walk. All right, you hold eye contact with 10 people for your walk. How does that feel? Okay, that feels good. Okay, now I want you to give just 5, 10 compliments this week. It could be anyone, it could be an old lady, it could be someone with a dog, it could be the cashier, or it could be someone you're attracted to. And then from there, you slowly build up momentum. And every moment, wherever part of the process you're at, there will be some things you feel resistance to. Like, let's say you get really good at initiating the conversation, but when you want to ask for a girl's number, they're interested, just freeze up, then you leave because you're like, I don't know how to do this. So in that moment, you remind yourself, okay, let me stay in 20% more than what feels comfortable. And that's like one of the rules of each. So do just one thing more than you feel comfortable with. So maybe just ask for the number anyway. If he doesn't want to give it, it's all good. What matters is you control what you could control, and you gradually increase how much you challenge yourself. So my recommendation would be figure out what your comfort zone is now, and then find the next step that you feel just a little bit uncomfortable with, and incorporate that into your day-to-day life. Because most people, when they want to make a change, they want to go really hard, but that leads to burnout. Like, imagine if you wanted to start this podcast, right? If you scheduled like 20 episodes in 1 week, and next you go like, dude, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But now, from what I'm getting, you're doing like a few episodes a week, and you're taking your time, you're finding the right people, which makes it a lot more sustainable. Although at the beginning it might have felt like, oh, this is growing slowly. But because it's sustainable, it's something that will stay.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, like in your own journey of like self-improvement and dating, who have been some of the mentors in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess I started this journey when I took a boot camp from a company called The Art of Charm. They used to have a really big podcast. I don't know if you've heard of them, but I took a boot camp with them. They basically like teach sales, sales, charisma, people who are, entrepreneurs, and all people who want to improve just a social side of their life. I did a week-long training with them. And when I went, like, I was 20 years old. I was the one kid in there with all these like grown adults. I was thinking to myself, dude, what am I doing here? Like, I didn't even have a single bit of facial hair. And all these guys are like rolling in, got their shit together. I thought, man, this is going to be interesting. But I guess one of the personal qualities that I always had was if I liked something, I would just go all in. So, at the time, that boot camp was very expensive for me, and it would be for anyone. It's like thousands of dollars. And I've been working part-time, so I thought, man, I have to change something. So I just paid, and I did the boot camp. And after that, I realized the potential of learning people who already have what you want, because we're paying either with like time or money. You can either take 5 years to learn something, do it on your own, or take a week to learn from someone who mastered that skill set. So when I took that week, it was the first time in my life where, we rolled into a venue, and I was like, dude, I already paid for this. I'm already here. I'm going to make the most of this.
Yeah.
Because you already have skin in the game. And that really pushes people to push themselves. When like you're a few $1,000s down, and if you don't do something, you're going to go home regretting the fact that you didn't do anything. So we went to the place, I talked to people, and actually for the first time in my life, like I got into a flow state where anyone who walked in, I could just talk to because I was in that flow state. And that night really changed my life because I realized like all these fears, insecurities that I had in my head, they were not real. I was placing those insecurities. And I was the one choosing to believe in those insecurities. So after that, what happened was I kept in touch with the guys and I actually started working for them the next summer. I was like, I want to do an internship with you guys. Just pay me like a minimum amount and I'll do whatever you need. So I started coaching there. And when you become someone who coaches this stuff, you can show up to a training and be like nervous. You have to be on your thing because people are paying you for this. So I forced to let my own thing. It's like a basketball coach. You need to know how the game works. And the best way to learn is actually put yourself in a position where there's a lot of accountability around you. And it's much easier for you to follow the herd doing that over and over again. That allowed me to progress really fast. So after that, I reached out to another mentor of mine I wanted to work with, who was more directed in terms of like dating and the ability to just approach a girl during the day without any alcohol, because I knew that was the next stage of development. And then after that, through building my business, I worked with, a fitness coach, a spiritual coach. And now that's kind of what led me to this holistic approach to dating, because I realized there's value in all these fields. And if you can combine those values, that's how we actually become the best person we can be, as well as build the regular skill set to just go out and talk to people. So I guess that's why I have a strong belief in mentorship, because every mentor I personally worked with really helped me tons. I know like some people do a mentorship and the guy promises something, he doesn't deliver. They just have a bad taste. But personally, I've been lucky enough to pick the right people through my research. And because that's helped me so much, that's kind of what pushed me to be in a position to be a coach, because I saw the impact that other people had in me by me learning from them. And I wanted to add that to people that I could work with.
That makes sense. Those are all the questions, by the way, that Sheldon asked, so we can kind of go off the rails, so to speak, and ask whatever. Was there something on your mind that you've been like researching or just like dealing with that's been more like common among clients recently or anything like that?
Yeah, let me think about that.
Okay.
Like I guess one of the common issues people have, I don't know, like if you personally had this as well, Alex, is when you first start, right? It feels like this is a bit of work. Like you have to put outside of that comfort zone. It doesn't feel fun. Or a lot of people struggle with that. Is that something that you resonate with as well?
A little bit, like the idea of the going out of my comfort zone to start. I guess I might be a unique exception because I really like trying new things, like learning new skills. So I might almost like have the reverse problem where it's like I like trying new things and the excitement of trying something new. The hard part for me is committing to activities, and that'll also depend on how much I like the activity and the communities around that. So I do struggle with that to some extent, but I feel like maybe not as much as like the typical person, because I actively seek out new experiences.
Yeah. Have you ever done an Enneagram test?
Yes, I'm a 4.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Your 7's probably high as well. Like for me, I also like new things. I think 7's the type where it's like enthusiastic visionary or something like that. But basically, you chase variety, you like having new experiences, you like to travel. And for me, that was my second highest one. And for you, probably high there. Oh, and it's interesting when you do these type of tests, you understand your own behavior. I'm your friend, right? It's weird that you try one thing and you try a different thing and you try a different thing and you have no problem. But when people are like, oh, it's time to commit, you're like, no. That's not what I came here for.
Yeah, so I've been trying to get better at that. Yeah, they are interesting. I feel like they all have their flaws, but they all give kernels of truth as well. Like whether it's like the Myers-Briggs Enneagram. There's a new one that I read this book recently. It's called Surrounded by Idiots. It was mostly dealing with workplace interactions, but it deals with a disc model. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Yeah.
And so it's like 4 different colors, and most people are like a combination of 2 colors. And there's red, yellow, blue, and green. And just like a quick overview, red is like the very like decisive, wants to get things done, like new things. So this is like common among CEOs and entrepreneurs. Yellows are like the social butterflies of the world, like the charmers, good storytellers. They're more focused on like big picture and inspiration. So like Oprah is considered a yellow. A lot of presidents are considered red. Greens are like one of the more common colors. They're very loyal and stable and like hardworking. They don't like to rock the boat. They're more introverted, but they're personal. Like they do like interacting with people, or they're focused on like other people's needs. Like they put others above themselves. And then blues are like the analysts. They look at things very like detail by detail. Like most engineers have some aspects of blue. So for me personally, I'm like a blue green, though more green than blue. I did work in Silicon Valley for a bit, but I have some red in me too, but a very little yellow. So that's the part I'm trying to explore more, is like, because I'm more introverted, being a social butterfly just seems so strange, like not even repressed, just like so different. I'm trying to learn how to incorporate that side of me more. I think that's a very interesting model. And it was talking more about workplace interactions, which makes a lot of sense. And what was really fascinating is they did an experiment where they grouped all reds, all blues, all greens, and all yellows. And it was all disasters. It was like kind of the idea is like the world works because you have an interaction of the colors.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I think B is like dominance and I is influence. I don't remember exactly what S and C were. But yeah, I think, personally, you said because you're an introvert, it's something that you're learning about. So did you personally have any challenges that maybe you were curious about? Or if not, what kind of led you to a point where you decided to take a break from dating? Because I guess a lot of people get to that stage.
Yeah, I was able to get dates. It was more like the compatibility side. So like for me personally, my goal is like a long-term relationship, kind of ride or die. So I wasn't just like dating like for the casual purpose. Obviously, you need to get dates to see if there's a connection. And for me, I was just like, I feel like so much of an outlier, like, and not like in a low self-esteem, just like different, not bad or good. And I just feel like I just didn't have compatibility with a lot of these dates. Like I had fun dates for sure, but that was like a little bit tricky. And I guess like with my viewpoints, like I view equality as very important in relationships. So, I'm not afraid to take the lead and like plan out a fun date and the details, but I'd also expect that, the next time around or somewhere down the line, they also plan a fun date. And like I have this idea of like getting proposed to by the woman instead of the other way around. Like it's like, if we live in an equal society, that should be more common too. So I think I know I've talked to, like, I have a lot of women friends that I've had amazing connections with over the last few years, and a lot of them think that's really strange. I don't really, and I've seen some women who agree with me, but I just feel like somewhat of an outlier. So I guess it's more compatibility is my issue. But, I've asked out like the hottest girl in the room, like I'll try new things, I can make a conversation, but I also get bored very easily. So in terms of yellows, I'm very activity driven. Like I hate parties, not because I can't interact with people, but it just feels like hollow talk to me. Like I'd rather like do an activity, even if it's like playing a board game, than like have empty talk. Like I like very deep conversations as opposed to like, very surface talk. And I have a lot of interests, so I can talk about sports, movies, anything, but I'd rather have like deep conversations. That's harder in like larger parties.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess in terms of like and please stop me if you don't want to go on
Sure.
this tangent. Like, I don't want things to get too personal if that's not what you're comfortable
No,
with.
I'm happy.
But in
I am an
terms of,
open
like,
book. Yeah.
all right. In terms of how you're meeting people, like, what are actually the locations that you met the people that you've seen? Because one of the common issues that I see is, you know, guys are at a certain stage of like spiritual development, self development, how they see the world, but they go to places where they just meet people who are in a completely different stage of development. So, where are you actually trying to meet people, or where were you trying before you decided to take a break?
Yeah, so it's been a journey in the last few years because I was working in Silicon Valley till 2021, but obviously the pandemic meant that during that time I was meeting people online, and then as things got back and I started grad school, I was meeting people through school. Obviously, school probably not the best place for people seeking more longer term things because it's a very transitory period, and things like that.
Especially at USC.
Yeah. Problem too is like I would love to meet people through like sports leagues and stuff, but like I'm part of a boxing gym, but it's like mostly all dudes. So it's like the activities I do, it's like either there's few women who are usually already in a relationship, or it's a lot of dudes. So it's a little bit tricky in terms of the places I go.
Mm-hmm. And what would be like some qualities that you'd look for in a woman that you'd want to date long term?
So again, very unique. I actually tend to like very like masculine or dominant women, just because it goes to the equality. Like I feel like it almost helps me become more like dominant if I know someone else can take the lead. And that's because I feel like in a lot of aspects of my life, I feel like the reluctant hero, and that like group projects, it's not like I try to take over and be a red like personality, but like if no one steps up, I want to make sure the project gets done. Like I have to lead in all these other areas of my life. I just feel like I don't want to be in a relationship where I only have to lead. Like I'd prefer an equal partnership. So I want someone who's also like able to take charge, be independent, like very strong-willed, and wants to. I think the most important thing is like wants to build something long-term as well, and also makes me feel like loved and cared for and stuff. And I wouldn't ask anything of a partner that I wouldn't do myself.
Okay. And have you heard about like spiral dynamics? Is that something that rings a bell? Or
That's what's funny is there's these two like self-help YouTubers like Julian and Owen, and I literally listened to a video of theirs yesterday where they mentioned this. I don't actually know what it is, but this has now come up twice in like 24 hours.
Yeah, are these like the RSC guys, Owen Cook and
Julian? They do talk about
RSC.
They talk a lot about like RSD, selective focus, limiting self beliefs, like kind of accepting things. Yeah,
it's the guy with the ginger beard. Is that who you're referring to?
That's one of them.
Or are these different people?
Yeah, I think so. I can send you a video of them too, and you can confirm. But one of them does have a beard.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, he's a cool guy. Actually, my fitness trainer used to live in his house, and that's just a random story for another time. But the reason that I bring this up is based on, I mean, this is just like a 40-minute conversation we had, but I've been reading this very interesting book. It's called Integral Relationships, and it goes really in depth in terms of how you can filter out the people that you can build something serious with. Okay. And one of the alignment areas is growth when it comes to ego development, which is your sense of self and how you relate to the world. And in spiral dynamics, what it did is this person did a long research paper, like a research study with a lot of people around the world. And based on answers to certain questions, they categorize people in colors. So the reason I bring this up, this might be a bit long-winded, but you'll see it later on in the conversation, is people go through stages. So you start off in certain stages that like just infants or some like mentally disabled people go through that regular people are not. And then you get to stages that are called like first tier stages, which starts with red, which is based on like instant pleasure, fight or flight. I'll do whatever I need to do without any looking at any consequences for the future. So this could be like a Mexican cartel or any like Italian mafia, people like that who just have a life and they want to solve the problem now, a few consequences. And then people move on to blue, which is like very conformist. Rules are the most important thing. There's a sense of right and wrong. So this sort of, religious communities that mind or some more conservative cultures like my country, Turkey, is mainly blue state. And you can use this for yourself and for different countries to understand what are the problems people face and why is there actual friction. Now,
Is this
would be interesting?
Book, the guy worked with Nelson Mandela, right, or something, or they referenced it? I thought I heard that at some point.
That I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be. Personally, I don't know.
But yeah, sorry to interrupt. So you're mentioning blue is the state of like conformity. That's like you mentioned Turkey and some other countries.
Yeah. So what get interesting to you? The orange is the state like I want material one, and I want this. It's like most of America. Hustle, grind hard. If this person's poor, it's because they didn't work hard enough. Fuck everyone over. Let's make it happen. That's like most of what the American mindset is. Now, after orange, people progress to green, which takes back your focus from yourself, which was what it was in orange, to the community again. So green is a lot more like environment. We want to care about environment. Yeah, so green is more like equality, deep conversations, environment, and we'll see all this like materialist that we've been pursuing is for nothing if we don't care about the environment because we're basically destroying the environment. It sounds to me, and this might not be accurate, you'll know this more if you study it a bit yourself, that you're somewhere inside that green range mostly, especially when it comes to relationships. However, the woman that you're searching for are more in orange because you want them to be like a bit more visionary, like a bit dominant, and those will be the women that you'll see a lot more in orange, like just the corporate, I want to hustle, I want to climb the corporate ladder, I care about equality, like I don't need a man, but I kind of need a man, but it's more like a compliment type of thing. So the issue with that is most women who are in orange, it's hard for them to connect with a man who's in green because them it feels like they're being lazy, they have a hard time committing, like they're always stuck in their head with the ideas rather than actually doing something. So for a girl who's in orange, it's going to take some open-mindedness to see the value in someone who has most of their like thinking in green because they haven't gone there just yet. That's why you probably feel all this friction, or that could be at least one explanation.
I've heard of spiral dynamics, but that was the first time I heard it explained more in depth. I definitely now want to read the book. But that actually makes a lot of sense. Like I never thought about it like that, but that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So in terms of that, right? Yeah. What you're probably thinking, well, if that's the case, like, what am I supposed to do? Just accept this and not do anything. So there's like different ways you can go about this. The first way would be after green, it's like the yellow stage. You're able to see the different perspectives and understand the value of being in orange and being in blue and being in red sometimes. Like if someone tries to do something to me on the street, you don't want to just be green and be like, yeah, equality, here's my iPhone. You want to go back to red and be like, fuck you, man. Don't
Oh
take my
yeah.
phone.
I mean, I experienced already yesterday, like I was playing basketball for hours and it's like, I need
Oh,
water.
really?
I was like super dehydrated. I was like, I don't care about anything else. Like I need to drink water. But yeah, no, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like you kind of fluctuate depending on the situation. Like you might have like a
Mhm.
default state, but like obviously in certain contexts, you need to go to like a blue or
Mhm.
a red or something else.
Yeah. So when you're able to like start switching between those things, which can sometimes do, not always, um, then you realize there is actually value in being a bit more materialistic. Because the interesting thing about spiral dynamics is when you advance a stage, the clear tendency until you get to yellow is you disown the stage before it. You're like,
Mm,
oh, fuck orange. All these capitalists are destroying our country.
mhm,
That's why people have all this friction between like California, who's environmentalists, like
mhm.
woke people, and then people in like Texas and Miami. They're like, oh, materialism. Like these
Yeah.
people are just being lazy. I don't care about environment. I care about making money and making money now.
Mhm.
So if you want to date that type of woman, part of you has to work on the orange dominant side a bit more without like getting into that toxic shadow of I want everything and I don't care what's the consequence. Because you can still care about, material wealth, dominance and power,
Mhm.
but do it in an ethical way.
Yeah.
And that's the part like I personally struggled with for a long time because I got to a point where I knew how to do marketing, but
Mhm.
I was like, well, but we all know how marketing works, and
Mhm.
is it really ethical to
Yeah.
be like, oh, here's the hook line, now read my post?
Yeah.
So for like a few weeks I couldn't write a post. And I was like, what am I supposed to do now? But then you learn to integrate the different stages. And then when things kind of come together and you can own the different stages, that's when like you'll see, okay, if I want to date this type of girl, then I need to have a bit more of that. And then when you meet that type of girl, there will also be girls who are dominant who have more of an openness to ends to green, which is where they will see the value that you bring in a little bit more. And
Mhm.
there's certain like questions you can ask when you meet people, or certain things that you can observe, like what people wear. If they wear expensive brands, they're probably more orange. If they dress like a bit more
Mhm.
conservatively, they're probably more blue.
Mhm.
But read that book in like called Integral Relationships, and if you want, I'll also tag you on a post I made in my free group where like I basically break this down because it's really easy when you get there to be like, well, fuck, there's no way out, and that's why people take a break.
Mhm.
But if you see like, oh, this is a fallacy I found myself in, then you can actually get yourself out of it. And then when you do, and you own what you want, and you are aware that whatever it is that you want, there's people who have what you want, then that conviction also brings people in, which is why people are able to build more unconventional relationships because they are communicating clearly. They have the conviction, but they do it in a compassionate way.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I really want to read this book now. I have a lot of books like in like a similar vein that are on my like to read list. There's like 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene,
Mhm.
um, some Stoicism stuff. So yeah, I feel like
Mhm.
I'm gonna add that to my. That makes a lot of sense. Like I feel like I understand that friction now, but I just didn't hear it explained in that way before. I feel like it's very similar to the disc model, where like once I learned those
Mhm.
colors, everything that I experienced in the work world made a lot more sense. And it's like kind of like spiral dynamics.
Yeah.
I feel like that makes sense. I want to read more. It's just one book, right? Like it's called Spiral Dynamics.
So Spiral Dynamics is a book, and also if you prefer video content, you can check out this guy named actualize.org. He's this like bald guy who just speaks to the camera,
Hmm.
and you just Google like spiral dynamics actualize.org. You'll have an overview, And then he has like 2 hour in-depth videos on the different like green, orange.
Hmm.
You can do that. But the specifically that I recommend, because spiral dynamics is just the stages.
Hmm.
If you read the book called Integral Relationships,
Hmm.
that shows you like what do you observe in the people that you meet in terms of, attachment style, sexual development, spiral development, spiritual development, and that brings everything together. It gives you tools that you use, meet someone new, understand where is this in these, like all these different aspects. And spiral dynamics is just one category in that. But for your situation, I think it resonates more. So integral relationships is more about finding the right person, building the right relationship based on those categories. And spiral dynamics is just one of those categories. That being said, I would start with spiral dynamics. It's one of the craziest things I've learned. After I learned it, as you said, I was like, everything makes sense now.
Hmm. Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that more. But yeah, that was actually all the questions I had on my end, but I'm happy to talk about if there's something that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I guess, just to wrap this up,
Sure.
like if you are someone who's not getting the results that you want when it comes to dating and social life, look at it in a holistic way. I think a lot of people get too stuck and they either feel bad because they're like, oh, I don't want to be the guy who, talks to every girl he sees. That's a bit weird. Or they will like get too caught up and they will only focus on that.
Hmm.
So for the goal that you have in dating, like relationships is one of the key pillars of your life. And living a life where you have the person you want by your side and you have that care and support is completely different compared to living a life where you see opportunities come your way, but you don't take them. You
Hmm.
lose like self-respect, you have lower self-esteem, you feel isolated. So really see how important this part of your life is. There's a lot of studies about how scientists have found that happiness highly correlated with the relationship that you have with people. And that doesn't have to be like dating and romantic relationships, but just how you connect with people overall. So I think a lot of people have avoidance mechanism, like having 10 different hobbies or
Sure.
working 80 hours a week or doing MMA for 3-4 hours a day or hitting the gym 2 hours a day to not have to worry about the lack of social life. And if you're one of those people, it's time to be honest and it's time to do what you know you need to do. Sometimes it requires a coach if you have the money and you want to cut the learning curve. And sometimes if you don't have the money or you have the time to go out a few hours a day for a few years straight, like I did, go ahead. Like of course, there's insights that I could pull, but there's nothing holding you back. You don't have access to now of meeting the people that you want to meet. What's holding you back is you. And the first part is like taking that ownership of the situation, which is why what we covered beginning with the victim mindset is extremely important because until you take ownership of the problems you face, you're never going to solve them. But when you do take ownership, your ego is going to get hurt a little bit. You're going to be like, oh, now I have to make this work because I knew, I'm the person causing this. But after that hurt and that pain, your life will get better. And just remember one thing to end off in is most people, you're not trying to get results tomorrow. Like as men, you could be 40, 45 years old and still date an amazing woman who guys would see by your side and they'll be like, oh shit, this man knows what he's doing. So if you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, even if you're in your early 40s, commit to this path for at least 5 years. Don't expect to see results for the first year, but build that momentum. If you trust yourself, next 5 years, talk to a few new people a day, learn different things, have interesting conversations, have that self-reflection. Within a few years, you will have the skill set down, and then the rest of your life you can grow and feel miserable. So I think having that long-term vision, as well as understanding how relationships and dating tie into other parts of your life, is extremely important, because if we try to take action without knowing why we're doing it, it's never going to stay.
No, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. I just want to say thank you again, Ege, for coming on. I feel like I learned a lot. I'm hoping my viewers learn a lot, and we'll make sure that we put your information also in the description, so if people want to check out more content from you, they're able to do so.
Yeah, Alex, thanks for having me. This is a great chat. And yeah, if anyone wants any resources, we'll have the resources down. And if you need anything, like, have a lot of content as well, if you get in touch with me, I'm not going to immediately try to sell you on something.
Sure.
I actually want to help you to see if you resonate with the content. And if you do, mentorship is always something that we can talk about. But what I care most about, as I said, is I started from ground zero, where I was socially awkward, overweight, and I was just playing video games. So I want people to have that level of transformation, because I know it's possible since I've done it myself. So if that's where you are, just know that it's possible. And as long as to make it happen, you'll find access to the resources that you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
Cool. Of course.